Good morning, everyone, and I'd like to give you a warm welcome on behalf of the Next Tourism Generation Alliance. My name is Lopke Elbers. I'm Communication Manager of this project, and today I have the honor to be the host and moderator of the first module of this conference and even kick off this day full of inspiration and 3 other different modules around the theme of building a skilled workforce in tourism. We really appreciate that you delegates join us on this live stream and tuning in from different time zones, of course. And with pleasure, we will introduce you to our 4 keynote speakers and 16 experts that will talk about the future of building a skilled workforce in tourism together. All our speakers will be talking in English, and we support you to use the hashtag Next Tourism Generation to share what you hear here today. And please do use it and share the interesting insights that you found. Since we want to really make this an interactive session, please feel free to join the chat and ask your questions there, because it's important that we all know and we all share our vision on the future. Before we start with the first keynote, I'd like to present you more about the Next Tourism Generation project really shortly. So I'm pleased to introduce you to the project and the project partners. This project started in 2018 with an innovative and transformative approach on skills development. With a partnership of 14 partners from 88 countries, we represent the tourism sector from an education and an industry perspective. And we created the first European alliance to transform the cooperation on skills for the tourism sector. The European Commission has demonstrated the importance of skills for the tourism sector and digital, social, and sustainable skills for the future of tourism. They also have a priority in this project. The Next Tourism Generation builds around one key concept, and that is to build a strong alliance between industry and the public sector. This alliance has a strategic approach, but is also very practical and operational at the same time. We hope that this project is a starting point for innovative cooperation on skills. Today, I'm very honored to have invited Natalie Bayona from UNWTO to share some of her insights and examples on skills development on a global level. But before we jump to that perspective, it is important to share with you what we are currently doing in this European project. This one I showed already. So the Next Tourism Generation project has 3 main goals, sorry. And that is, first of all, to build a mechanism in each country together with tourism stakeholders for continuously tracking and bridging the gap between current and future tourism skills. Secondly, we improve the relationship between the tourism enterprises, education system, and governments. And thirdly, we provide employees, employers, entrepreneurs, trainers, and students with a set of tools and training modules in digital, green, and social skills. The project is based around 5 tourism subsectors. And since the tourism industry is dramatically changing to the impact of emerging technologies, the sustainable tourism needs, health and safety issues, increasingly fast changing visitor demands, we try to focus on the skills and developments that are needed and that needs to be addressed in the 5 tourism subsectors of accommodation, destination management, food and beverage operations, travel agency and tour operators, and visitor attractions. The project is designed to address the skills development, and we know that the value chain of the tourism industry is huge. The main challenge of our industry is, of course, to stimulate the industry with a fresh vision on education and stimulate the industry also with support of the umbrella of the European Commission with all of our activities as a way forward for the future of the sector and alliances for skills. How can we build a tourism ecosystem based on skills? Now we created some interesting tools and products, but the different modules of today will give you a glimpse of the tools and frameworks that have been developed in the past few years. Brought into context with our keynotes and experts to discuss the relevance, the challenges, and the opportunities. What is the role of skill assessments and other tools such as the NTG Skills Lab that we're developing? How can we support industry and education to address skills needs at a very operational level? And how can we support industry and education to address skills needs from a quality assurance perspective? Secondly, the main question remains, how can we collaborate more intensely on a European, national, regional level, and how can new skills and tools be integrated into industry and education curricula? We bring together education, government, and industry here today. To maintain and consolidate the primacy of the EU as the leading tourism destination worldwide, of course, to make Europe an ever greener, digital, and tourist-friendly area, and to ensure that in the next decades, tourism continues to be a capital-saving and labor-intensive sector within the EU economic system. This theme of today will focus on upskilling and reskilling in tourism and hospitality. Keeping track of rapidly changing skills needs and bridging skills gaps to cope with a world in constant flux are major challenges for tourism businesses, education providers, and governmental bodies. This involves not only the acquisition of new skills, but also lifelong education and continuously reskilling and upskilling. This session today will look at methods of how to keep track on rapidly changing skills needs. Today, we will start with a keynote of Natalie Bayona. She would be here, but due to her busy schedule, she took the time to prepare a speech for the NTG conference full of inspiration and considerations from her point of view about upskilling and reskilling the tourism workforce, about collaboration and having the right mindset.
Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today with you. Today, I have the honor to talk about the challenges that tourism is facing thanks to this pandemic. I have to say that the challenges of the tourism sector are the same before and after the pandemic. The thing is that COVID-19 has accelerated these challenges. I would start by saying that the 5 challenges that the tourism sector has are: first of all, innovation; second of all, education; third of all, investments; fourth of all, added value jobs; and fifth, or last but not least, sustainability. When we are talking about innovation, the main focus of our job is improving the tourism innovation ecosystem. I have to say that thanks to this journey, we need to improve the connection between governments, startups, investors, academia, of course, institutions, and the national governments. Today, I have to say that those connections have been improving the way we are innovating. Nonetheless, we need more pilot projects between startups and corporates. We need a more serious supply chain between providers and corporates that are buyers of those technologies that the startups develop. We need a more interesting venture capital culture. Just some facts and figures. The last year, $22 billion were invested in tourism startups. That's amazing because besides the pandemic, venture capital was increasing. Nonetheless, those entrepreneurs and those startups that received investment, 80% of them were based in the US and China, that are the more mature innovation ecosystem. So my question here is, what is happening with the other countries? What is happening with the tourism innovation ecosystem? We need to improve more in order to bring those capitals to emerging markets as Latin America, Asia Pacific, and African countries. That's why our role through startup competitions, challenges, innovation forums, that are the UNWTO Tourism Tech Adventure Forums, are part of the key strategies in order to foster a more mature tourism innovation ecosystem. Another fact, I don't know if you know, but from the 100% unicorns that are enterprises that are valued on more than $1 billion, only 5% are from the tourism sector. We need to help the internationalization process of entrepreneurs. We need to connect them with investors, with corporates, with governments, etc. Second great challenge that we have, education. I don't know, once again, if you know, but this is really important. Tourism is the top employer of women and youth. Nonetheless, 50% of the young, talented minds working in tourism only have secondary skills. If we want to develop a high-level economic sector, we need to improve education. And digital education is here to stay. Thanks to digital education, we can scale up the way people are educated. Our aim this year is to have at least 30,000 new students in our UNWTO Tourism Online Academy. And how can we do this? Of course, developing partnerships with top universities. It doesn't matter if they are focused on managerial or vocational skills, but we need to improve the way people get a certificate in order to have a formal career and a formal professional path in the tourism sector. And of course, if I'm talking about innovation, that is the sector for youth. If I am talking about tourism, that is the sector of youth, of course, innovation and education has to be aligned if we want the third challenge, that is added value jobs. As I already said, 100 million jobs are under risk thanks to this pandemic. But of course, if we don't have people with a professional certificate, if we don't get the tools to help them to access, how we can preserve those jobs. So that's why inside our public policies from national governments, in our commercial strategies from the corporates, from the big hotel chains, from the big airlines, from the SMEs, in every single company that is working in tourism, every single company needs to have an innovative mindset, but of course, a strategy to train their employers to be better and to develop what always the people that work in education says, to be a lifelong learner. It means to study, to learn, to relearn, to unlearn, but we need to help people to gain new skills, skills on technology, skills on big data, skills on how to measure and how to deal with artificial intelligence. But on the other side, to deal with humanities, because this is the more human economic sector. So of course, we need a hybrid model between bringing leaders full of commitment, communication skills, on political skills, but on the other side, we need hard skills as well. And that combination will help us to create a high-level economic sector. Fourth of all, of course, we need investments, but not any kind of investments, green investments. Why green investments? As you have seen, tourism decreased by 75% during 2020. I have another fact. Foreign direct investment decreased 75% as well. So if we want investors back, of course, we need economic incentives, tax incentives, and everything related to political and legal stability with, of course, a very serious framework. But our aim in the UNWTO is to promote green investments, to promote that investors bring their capital to create sustainable cities, more modern cities, but of course, inclusive cities, inclusive destinations, inclusive amusement parks that are full of commitment with the environment, with technology, with the human beings. And of course, that thanks to their investments, we can create added value jobs focused on the power of tourism. That's why we have been partnering with the International Development Bank, with the IFC, and with other international financial institutions, because we know that together, through a legal framework, through a political stability, and of course, with a multilateral message on what we know that will recover the sector again, we will have a very powerful message, and we can help investors to develop a tourism investment culture thanks to this framework. And last but not least, of course, sustainability. Most of the people think that being sustainable is about working with the environment and for the environment. And to be honest, being sustainable is not only talking about the environment, it's about at least working with communities, working with the most vulnerable people, working for inclusion, using technology for good, and of course, to take care about the environment. So, of course, after this pandemic, I have learned, and I know that you all have learned about how sustainability needs to be part of our lives. So, if we develop a more sustainable framework where innovators bring solutions for a more sustainable development, if we bring green investments, if we create curricula inside the institutions in order to promote sustainability, and last but not least, if we add value through our jobs in order to take care and to give back to the community, thanks to the tourism sector, we are using the sector to become from important to relevant. I know that today you will have a lot of conferences, but I would like to end with this final message, that is, the responsibility of recovering the tourism sector is from all the tourism ecosystem. Is not only the responsibility of the UN, WTO, is not only the responsibility of the governments, it's not only the responsibility of the private sector. We all need to recover the tourism sector. To recover the tourism sector, responsibility is part of our job, and educating people, improving innovation, working on added value jobs, and developing a more modern, sustainable, and innovative tourism will help us to recover this sector again, and to lead by example by using resilience and by using this high-level network, that is the human network, in order to improve the way people live, the way people travel, and the way people are educated. Thank you so much, and enjoy the journey.
Yes, as Natalia said, we need a clear vision for the future on a European level, national, regional, and local level. This sets up the conversation we are about to have in the near future. Now I'd like to turn to our next keynote speaker, Andrew Crisp. He founded Carrington Crisp with Mary Lou Carrington in 2003. Since that time, the business has worked with more than 180 business schools and universities in 35 countries, through consulting, creative, and research services that help institutions change. Most recently, Carrington Crisp published a report with LinkedIn on the future of lifelong and executive education, surveying more than 2,500 learners and 500 employers worldwide. The study was the fourth in a series of reports over the past 18 months that have examined the trends in the future of education and work. Previously, Andrew worked in a branding agency as the employment correspondent for the European newspaper, as marketing director for internet business, and as campaign leader for an education charity. You can imagine that we are very delighted to have Andrew here. Thank you for being us today. We are very curious to hear your perspective about the future of lifelong and executive education. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lopke. It's a pleasure to be here today and speaking to you and all those watching on YouTube. Let me just share my screen and we can get started. There we go. So as you've heard from Lopke, I'm going to talk very much about the findings from the study that we did with LinkedIn earlier this year. But the overall breadth of my presentation, I suppose, is going to look at how people will learn in the future, where they will learn, when they will learn, what they will learn, and also to an extent what all of this means for higher education. So as Lopke suggested, the report published in the summer this year covered 2,500 learners aged 25 to 55 in about 18, 20 different countries around the world, 500 employers as well in a separate study. And that report is available to download free of charge if you wish to. The web address where you can see it is there on the screen now. And equally, I'm very happy to share the slides that I'm presenting today. I suppose in some respects, this quote sums up how I see the market changing. This is from the former chief operating officer of a leading university, who's now working for one of the online program managers as a senior advisor, and makes the point really clearly that in the past, an employer might have decided to send 2, 3, maybe people to a top institution, to send them on an advanced management program for several weeks, and it would cost them $50,000. Today, that agenda has all changed. Instead of sending 2 or 3 people, an employer can send 50 people, not to a physical location, but to the content of this top university. And this person suggested Harvard, but it could be any number of institutions around the world. So the whole nature of learning, of study, of education, the numbers who can access this sort of quality content, the impact it can have on companies and on individuals has completely changed. And that was already happening pre-pandemic, but it's been accelerated massively through the pandemic. So the message, as the photo says, is start thinking about things differently. There's a new way to learn, and that's important for learners and for employers, and of course, for those who deliver the learning in higher education. So there were, I think, perhaps 6 key messages coming out of the research with LinkedIn. First of all, COVID accelerates digital adoption. Absolutely no surprise. These are probably 4 of the most frequently used words in the English language at the moment. The pace of change has been enormous, and I'll add a little bit more detail on that in a moment. Because of that, flexibility and personalization are going to be at the heart of future learning. The idea that learn anywhere, anytime opportunity, the idea that instead of a university saying, you can start this course on this day and it'll last this length of time, the individual will be able to say, I want to start this course now, I want to do it over this time period, I want to do it in this way, and I want to do it with this institution in this part of the world. So personalization, very much the key. And because of that, this third point, the idea of the death of geography, somebody could be in Vietnam, and historically, most of their opportunities for learning would have been local. They have been regional. Most people are unable to give up their job, travel across the world, invest in large fees. But today, all of that is possible. That person in Vietnam can study on a short course online at Harvard and not leave home. They can stay in their job, they can learn, they can apply what they're learning the day after they've learned it. So geography becomes much less of an issue. And because of that, brand becomes much more important. If somebody decides they need something to help their career, if they need to learn a new skill, they need to have a new course, they'll want it now, they'll want it straight away. And because of that, those brands, those learning providers that have strong brands will be top of mind. Harvard being the obvious example, as we've already mentioned. So having brand awareness will be really important for providers of learning. And the other side of that is the competition for higher education. So we see these new business models emerging. And again, I'll talk about them a little bit more in a moment. These online tech-led, supported by venture capital, they have a big presence in the market, a big awareness. I think edX last year saw a 161% increase in the number of learners on its platform. So you can see that the competition for learning, that places where people learn is changing as well. And because of all of that, for higher education, collaboration has to become the new normal. And it's great to see a project as the Next Tourism Generation Alliance bringing together business, learners, higher education, and making an offer that is relevant for all of those, rather than seeing people in isolation and doing things differently and repeating things and redeveloping things everywhere. Much better to come together and build those partnerships to maximize the effectiveness and impact of learning. So I want to begin with a few numbers. 350 million, enormous number. It's a number from a report that McKinsey put out before the pandemic, back in 2018. 350 million was a number of employees that McKinsey's felt would have to reskill or upskill to remain in employment. If you add in the impact of the pandemic, my guess is that number could have doubled. So many people around the world who are going to have to learn new skills to advance in their careers or simply remain in employment as we go forward. The second one builds on the point I made a moment ago, 5 million. Coursera, many of you will know of Coursera, one of the online program managers, the big online program managers, has been going for a few years, originally built around the MOOC side of things. In the second quarter of last year, Coursera added 5 million new learners to their platform. That's, as if every business school in the world, so there are about 11,000 business schools in the world, but every business school added 5,000 learners in 3 months. It just doesn't happen. And it's possible because of technology. And then the final number, 700,000 here, very interesting, 720,000, 750,000, something like that, is the number of employees that Amazon has in the US. And why is this important? Amazon have recently announced that they're going to make free college places available for all of their employees. This idea of workplace learning, workplace lifelong learning has very much come to the fore, with employers using learning as an employee benefit to attract and retain staff and develop them in the skills that are important for their business. So enormous numbers here, but they give a sense of the change in the learning education marketplace. And just building on what McKinsey said in their report back in 2017, it's not just the numbers, it's the way people learn and the things that they'll need to learn. So spend less time on predictable physical activities, on collecting and processing data where machines already exceed human performance. Instead, the skills and capabilities required will be more social and emotional skills, more advanced cognitive capabilities, such as logical reasoning and creativity. So there's a shift in terms of what people will need to learn and how they will learn. And you can take this forward and you can look at this quote from an employer who spoke about business schools and universities being too product-centered, like a vinyl long-playing record, when what they need to be is more like Spotify, where the learner has control, where they can assemble a playlist of skills that they need to acquire over time when it's convenient for them, and from providers that they recognize and value. So a real change in the nature of the delivery of learning is required as well. And I said earlier on, you see this in the alternative providers. LinkedIn Learning already being used by 1 in 5 learners who took part in our study in the summer. 20% would consider a host of others, people like FutureLearn, Coursera, General Assembly, 2U, edX. 2U and edX, of course, have merged recently. So a vast range of new learners in the marketplace. And I'll just give you one more example. A company called Baiju. I hadn't heard of Baiju this time last year. BYJU, it's an Indian company, only started 10 years ago. They began with a little app on a phone to help children learn maths. But today they've just signed a deal with Disney to use their characters to build that side of their business. They're getting into the workplace learning marketplace. And as I said, this is a company that didn't exist 10 years ago. Well, at their last valuation, this company was valued at $18.5 billion US. So you get a sense of the change that's taking place in the marketplace and the potential that these alternative learning providers offer to the market. Just to put this into detail in terms of online learning, 2019, the market was valued at 45 billion globally. At the start of the pandemic, 97 billion was the estimated forecast of the value of the market in 2025. 6 months into the pandemic, that had gone up by 20% to 117 billion. You can see how the scale of online learning is growing so rapidly. And so what does the classroom of the future look like? Here are two ideas. So you have on the left the coffee shop. You get the coffee, you get out your laptop, you put on your headphones, you start learning. You sit there for an hour, maybe with one coffee or a glass of water, and somehow you're learning, you're managing that expectation. On the right-hand side, two professors who've got a garage, a white screen, a high-end camera, and they're teaching. The capital costs of a big university with enormous lecture theatres, it just isn't the way of the future. That having been said, that there are some interesting nuances to think about. Brand reputation will be important. So 62% of learners say future learning they undertake has to be with a provider with an international brand reputation. Well, why is that? It's because they want the employer that they want to work for to understand the quality of their learning, partly because there's a vast range of new qualifications that employers may not be aware of. And so brand stands as a proxy. The other side of this, you've got the question about online becoming more important with both employers and employees. But the other part of this is employers themselves looking to build long-term relationships with learning providers, with large brands that can have the understanding of their business, have the experience of the pedagogy, have the staff who can do the delivery of the learning and can maximize impact from learning. If they're going to have lifelong learning for their employees, they'll want lifelong relationships with providers of learning for those employees as well. So considerable change taking place in the marketplace, and that change extends to employers as well. I thought it was a wonderful quote from a dean of an institution in North Africa who said, yes, the companies know what they want. They know where they're going, or at least they think they do, but somehow their advance is a little bit like a tango. It can be very rapid, but then all of a sudden it can change direction. So there's some uncertainty about what things employers believe their staff will need to learn in the future. You look at this, I try to avoid having big graphs and charts in these types of presentations, but I think it's a very interesting one. So you have on the x-axis at the bottom, the importance of skills. You have on the y-axis, the availability of skills. And you can see leadership there in the top right-hand corner. Yes, it's important, but actually it's quite widely available. What is more interesting is down at the bottom, managing a multi-generational diverse workforce. So very important, but those sorts of skills are not available. And there's a variety of things here that might fit in. Responsible management, again, important, not as available as most of the skills. And that point about the multi-generational diverse workforce, it comes through time and again. You can see it here when we asked individuals in the survey what they wanted to do. Yes, leadership is there, communication is there, but responsible management, decision-making, complex and uncertain times, social impact, a whole variety of different skills that are relevant to the new economy, the way things are changing, as well as those things that have always been important: strategy, marketing, productivity. Of course, those things remain important, but there's a whole host of new things that are going to be key for individuals. And this diverse workforce, it comes through very clearly in this idea of the 100-year life, that people are going to be working longer into their lives, perhaps retiring later, and therefore the market for learning, instead of being focused perhaps historically on a small area, people aged up to 25, maybe 30, the market for learning for higher education suddenly grows to an audience that maybe goes up to 60 to 65, maybe even older. People looking to learn throughout their life, and that means they'll want to learn in different ways. The later into your life you get, the less chance you'll want to do a degree. The return on the investment is simply not there, but you still need to learn. You need skills that can quickly impact your career, and that's going to be very important for higher education to understand that and be able to respond to that need. So we have this, this thought. I think this is a great thought. A guy who was the chief education evangelist at Google. Only Google could have a chief education evangelist somehow. But his point is that we're not looking to do things the way we did them in the past. Because if you look at today's children, you look at today's teenagers, then the idea that they want to go and sit in this sort of classroom you can see in the background in this photo, it's just nonsense. Perhaps they want to start their own business. They can go and find some server space. They can be working anywhere and they can start whatever they want. And that means a different type of learning is important. And a different type of qualification as well. Now, of course, you have the degree, but as this quote says, the monolithic degree. Instead, you can add in other elements. You can tailor the degree to the particular circumstances you find yourself in. And that means different types of qualifications as well. So people talk about diplomas, they talk about digital badges. Yes, masters and MBAs are there, but they talk about micro-credentials as well. People are looking for these different types of qualifications. And because of that, brand, as I said earlier on, becomes much more important to give a signal of the quality of the learning that is taking place. So let me just end with this slide to really sort of sum up the different ways that people might want to learn in the future. These are all data points from the study that we did with LinkedIn. So first of all, a third say they're interested in a degree, but a degree they can earn in a series of modules over an extended time period as and when it suits them. Just over a quarter, a degree that can be topped up at low cost over the next 10 years with updated or new skills. This idea of linear learning, that you start a degree, you simply work your way through until you finish, it's becoming the past. Instead, people will do a bit of a degree, then they might go and work. Then they might come back and do a bit more of the degree. Then they'll go and work again. They'll come back and do a short course with maybe the same provider, maybe with a different provider. And then 3 out of 10 here say the idea of a Netflix-style learning platform, allowing an individual to choose from a variety of providers to build their own course. So not Netflix in terms of education, but Netflix in terms of using artificial intelligence. Just as Netflix might suggest, you've watched this, so you might enjoy watching this. So on a learning platform, what we might find is a situation where you've taken one program, your career is heading in this direction, and the platform will recommend what else you might want to learn in the future. And then finally, at this point, 25% are very interesting communities of learners that enable continued peer learning beyond formal studies. So rather than sitting in this lecture theatre that you see in the image here on the slide, you'll learn from friends, you'll learn socially, you'll learn from people at work, you'll learn in all sorts of informal ways, you'll learn online with a Coursera or with somebody else, you'll learn with your employer. The opportunities for learning will be very varied. They'll be delivered in different ways, they'll be delivered at different times, they'll be personalized, they'll be flexible, they'll offer enormous opportunities for employers, for learners, and for those in higher education who can think differently about the future of learning. So I'm going to conclude there. I'll look forward then to taking part in the panel shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for outlining the steps, the considerations, and most of all, the opportunities you see in this area, in this vital sector. And as you said, we need to see the bigger picture and consider new ways to deliver new learning. A very big thank you to Natalie Bayona from UNWTO and Andrew Crisp from Keraton Crisp for underlining that upskilling, reskilling, and reshaping training and tools are vital for the future of the tourism sector. Joining me now to discuss this from an industry and education perspective, I'm delighted to welcome Sanne Marie Ranfors. She is a research manager and the head of the Center for Tourism Business Development at Satakunta University of Applied Sciences in Finland. She holds a PhD in marketing and a master's degree in education. She has extensive experience in managing international projects and conducting research in tourism, skills and curriculum development. And in particular, she's very enthusiastic about increasing skills for sustainable development. Welcome, Sanne Marie. And I also like to introduce you to Saskia Griep. Saskia is co-founder and CEO of Better Places, a travel platform with a strong focus on sustainability. Better Places offers unique, high-quality travel experiences that are 100% tailor-made by local travel experts. On the German market, they operate as far away. And Saskia studied tourism and cultural anthropology and has a postgraduate degree in sustainable business. She has experience in all facets of the adventure travel industry, from marketing to senior management. And her goal is to combine business opportunities with sustainability and at the same time preserve the planet's natural resources. Before the pandemic, Better Places successfully organized the Better Tourism Academy, which is a challenging traineeship for graduates, and also the reason why we invite her. And of course, I have Andrew Crisp joining us on this panel discussion. So welcome to all three of you. And ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned to you earlier, if you do have questions, get them in quickly as you can and short as you can, so we can see at a glance what your question is and who it is for. And I tried to squeeze some of them in later on. Well, let's jump right into the first topic, the challenges and opportunities for upskilling and reskilling in tourism and hospitality. Because keeping track of these changing skills needs and bridging the skills gaps to cope with the changing world are the major challenges for tourism businesses, but also for education providers and governmental bodies. So Sanne Marie, the first question for you. Can you tell us about how your country and especially your organization is keeping track of rapidly changing skills needs? And what kind of mechanisms and tools are you using, and how is this proven to be successful?
Hey, thank you, Lopke. First of all, nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Greetings from Finland. Do you have questions? Maybe first starting from the national level. Here in Finland, the Finnish National Board of Education, they anticipate competence and training needs together with tourist stakeholders. For example, they examine what kind of skills working life needs in the future, and they also determine how much and what kind of training is needed. Based on this, they, for example, recommend the number of study places in tourism around different educational institutions in Finland. So let's say this foresight information, it also supports the development of tourist education quite much. Then if you think about the regional level, also I think like the national authority, our regional authority, they have a very strong role. They coordinate regional work related to skills development and foresight. They also anticipate, for example, regional long-term skills and labor needs in connection to that in tourism, and they integrate these issues in the regional development plan. And then, for example, of course, different kind of funding possibilities are directed to increase the identified skills. In general, I think that it's important to note that in Finland, collaboration between the tourist industry and vet institutions is at a very high level. Studies are conducted in collaboration with the industry by using different methods of workplace learning. It's also regulated by the Finnish law that regional development is one of the obligations of universities of applied sciences. So it means that universities of applied sciences in Finland, they do not only deliver tuition, but they develop and coordinate development of the tourist industry, for example, by implementing different EU-funded projects. As an example, I can give that we as a University of Applied Sciences, we run a Center for Tourist Business Development. Our network consists more than 600 tourist entrepreneurs and 100 other tourist stakeholders. And currently we have about 15 tourist-related projects, mainly financed by EU. And in these projects, sustainable tourist development and digitalization are the skills which are improved in tourist companies. So I think that this very strong collaboration between the industry and between education providers, it very much allows us to keep track of rapidly changing skills needs. And one thing is also that our education system is quite flexible. So we are able to integrate new topics, the signals we get from the industry, generate them to courses, to our existing curricula without very heavy bureaucratic processes. So I think that the environment here we are working with in Finland is the one that supports very much, for example, keeping track of the rapidly changing skills needs. And then also there are mechanisms and tools which we can use. And most of all, this very strong industry collaboration is, I think, the key very much into these issues.
Thank you for sharing these inspiring examples. I think that Finland is really also leading innovative education and reshaping maybe the tourism ecosystem, where we have a different role for researchers, lecturers, and even students with these new mechanisms. We come to that back later. Thank you so much. Saskia, I would like to ask you, what are for you the key challenges to prepare for the tourism of tomorrow and beyond, in the light of skills development, and of course the key challenges to meet the opportunities, because we tend to talk a lot about challenges, but often these are opportunities, and I know you see a lot of things as an opportunity. So can you share a bit more on that from your perspective? Oh, I think you have to unmute yourself. Yes.
Sorry. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much, Andrew, for the presentation, because it really inspired me, and I think it offers a lot of opportunities for SMEs, for small and medium-sized businesses. And I already got a lot of ideas after your presentation, so thank you for that. And yeah, I think for me, the main thing, well, I like the slide you showed about the areas where there are a lot of trainings and where there's still very few courses. And that for me, for example, is about sustainability and climate change, because I think that's a huge challenge, opportunity for the tourism industry. And I think there's still a lot of, for me, it's a mismatch between what you see, especially with young people or the climate strikes, and what is happening in the sector. And I think there's so much potential, and also so much, it's so interesting, especially for young people, to contribute to a better future. And there's so many opportunities to do that online, because then you can reach so much more people. And we as Better Places are already experimenting with it, because we're more like, well, our business model is not a traditional business model, because we're more like a platform, and we don't work together. Okay, we tell our partners what we need and what we want, but it's much more in a partnership. And that also resonated with me from the presentation from Andrew, that you can learn so much from each other. We have over 60 partners all over the world. We do have already online sessions with them, and then you can see our way of thinking is so different from many other perspectives. And if you come together in an online meeting, you can share your visions, and it becomes so much more valuable.
So actually what you're saying is that it's so important to have that network in place and to continuously interact and engage with each other to create that common vision and perspective on, in your case, then most importantly, the sustainable skills and the development of that.
Yes, and especially during the pandemic, I mean, sometimes it's really hard to be in the business, and sometimes you don't see the future anymore. But then working on sustainability we can give each other also positive energy, and to look at the future farther ahead and work on it together.
And do you also see then a role for you, because you talk, of course, with other tourism organizations, but what is your role then in relation to education? How are you trying to have those conversations from your side?
Yeah, I realized that there's a lot to be improved. And I see our role in working together with tourism institutes and distributing the information as well, because, well, like for me, that's a very important skill, to be able to look for courses, to look for information. And we sometimes know what our partners need, and then we can give them directions.
Yeah.
But I don't see a role in developing things. I think that's the role for the tourism institutes, but of course we can contribute, and we can, like Sana Maria was mentioning, the system, how it's working in your country. I think that would be really valuable for the Netherlands as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I'd like to turn to Andrew quickly. Of course, we have enjoyed your presentation very much. And in terms of challenges, as Sana Maria and also Saskia said, well, we try to build a more digital, green and social-oriented labor market in tourism. But for example, if we look a bit closer to digitization and technology, what can you share of what you see in other sectors in relation to skills development? And do you think the challenges on these topics of digitization and technology have changed fundamentally because of COVID, or perhaps COVID has accelerated and highlighted the most important ones? I'm very curious to hear that from you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Lobke. I think the word is acceleration, absolutely. I'm not sure that things have changed, but things have perhaps become more prominent. And things are changing more quickly than they were prior to the pandemic. And certainly we see it in, we take a field like accountancy, very factual in many respects, very technical in very many respects. But actually what the technology is now allowing things to do is be delivered very differently, and be delivered in partnerships, and to draw from others' experiences. I think Saskia was just saying, this idea that you can learn from others rather than simply learning in formal settings is really important. We have a phrase in English about not reinventing the wheel. So somebody will have done something already somewhere, rather than you doing it all over again. Learn from them, draw from their experience. And I think particularly, again, Saskia mentioned this idea of responsibility and sustainability. And we see it absolutely. We did a big study on MBA students for the last 2 years. And in there, we asked a question about responsible management. And all of a sudden, from going from almost nothing, 50, 60%, and then 70% the following year, are saying this has to be part of their learning. This has to be part of their future MBA programs. So the content is changing, the way people learn is changing, the way the learners work together to deliver the learning is changing. And I thought Sana Marie's comment about flexibility within the Finnish HE system, so important to find different ways for providers to deliver going forward.
Already so many nice ideas and suggestions how to change, right? How to transform the education, and to see how we can create tourism-proof of a future-proof workforce. I like to jump from that perspective to the other topic of how can skills development help by rebuilding the tourism sector and create a sustainable workforce in the future. And with sustainable workforce, I don't only mean sustainable skills, but really a workforce that is able to be flexible and to be resilient in the future, to cope with any other challenges that might come our way. So in terms of investments for the tourism sector, building and growing the sector and individual brands increasingly requires implementation and launching of new technology trends and digital that can play a role in shaping the future of tourism. And of course, we need to ask ourselves the question, like, how can social skills or better focus on sustainability, technology, and digitization help? And how can we better connect skills as a strong added value as a sector in the eyes of the consumers, especially in view of the expected post-COVID recovery? Saskia, we heard from the previous speeches about the immediate challenges, the importance and the impact that skills development has on the industry. But as we look further ahead, the previous speakers also talked about the vision, the transformation, and the future of digital, social, and green skills in tourism. We need to know where we are going. And Better Places launched the Better Tourism Academy. Can you tell us a bit more about the characteristics of the academy, the idea, the vision, and also how this could help the tourism workforce and for a better future in tourism and travel?
Yeah, we launched the Tourism Academy, I think 5 years ago, because we thought that students, when they finish their the institutes of the tourism education, they weren't ready to work because they lacked the practical skills. And and we also found it important to show how much variation there is with in the tourism industry. So we started this academy, and we did it with a lot of entrepreneurs, because we work with a lot of freelancers. They have their own business, and we ask them to share their knowledge and also their struggles to the students or to the trainees. And there was also a big part was focused on sustainability, and really to show what is possible if you dedicate attention to sustainability. Because what we experienced and what we also heard from the students, that when they start working in a tourism company, a tour operator, that they also say, sustainable, we do it when you have time left. But we want to put it into the heart of our company and want to show that you can really be successful if you focus on it. So it was very inspirational, and we also asked our partners, so our local experts, to do parts of the traineeship, so they could really also talk about the variation. And the idea was also to let the students find the direction. What do they really like? And so they can learn more about it. And the main thing was also to show them where to find the information, because you're never finished with learning. So it's very important to know, if you want to know more about a certain thing, how can you find it? I think that was basically what it was about. And after that, the idea was also that they would work for some time with one of our partners. And actually the vision for the future would also be that we not only focus on Dutch students or German students, but also that students from our partner or students from other countries could join. And of course, it's nowadays there's so much change. So when we will start it up again, it's at the moment we didn't do it last year, but we definitely want to start it again. And then we will definitely make much more use of the online learning tool, so we can reach a much broader number of students.
Yeah, it's a great initiative. It will be amazing if more people can join and learn on that platform. Andrew, in your opinion, on the short term and long term, what are the benefits for the tourism sector of focusing really as one of the main points when you talk about strategy on upskilling and reskilling from an innovation perspective and on rebuilding the sector? You as an outsider maybe have another point of view that might be interesting to learn from.
Yeah, I think probably that the one thing that occurs to me is the ability to change quickly. So the learning platforms that Saskia talked about just a moment ago, they're their own, but the variety of others around the world means that it's much more possible to move, to change direction, to develop a new offer, to use the talent you have in your organization, but to add something else to it. It's this idea of learning, but also of unlearning, of not doing things the way you've always done them simply because you've always done them that way. And I think one of the really interesting parts of that is it means not simply learning from the people you've always learned from as well. There are lots of different experiences and therefore lots of different attitudes to doing things found throughout the world, rather than simply saying we only have to learn from these people because we've always learned from these people. And part of that we see is this idea that the case studies that are taught in universities are so often 40 years old. It's about a different world. not today's world and not tomorrow's world. And so drawing ideas from different parts of the world and from different providers and creating something that's relevant, whether it's to do with sustainability, whether it's simply to do with business, but unlearning and then learning in a new way is going to be so important.
Are you then also talking more a cross-sectoral approach? Just not only looking at what's happening in your sector, but also getting the information from other industries and try to make the translation?
Yes, I think that's absolutely true. I just think of my own life. Yeah, do I just want to read one type of book forever? Do I only want to read about this thing, or do I want to read different things and get different views and have a richer, more rewarding life? And the same must be true of business, of the tourism sector. Do we just learn from other tourism businesses, or do we actually learn from different types of businesses? Do we learn from different parts of the world who have done things in different ways? It's one of the most wonderful things about international education, that brings people together to learn from each other based on their different experiences. Because if you simply repeat the things that you've been doing in the same way, time after time after time, eventually you'll grow old and stale, and other providers will accelerate past you, do better than you, and your business will struggle. So being flexible, being imaginative, it's a great word, imagination, use your imagination, I think would be my big message.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. That also on the lines, I referred back to the speech of Natalie Bayona from UWTO. She says that we really need to look into what's happening at other continents as well, to learn and to bring the knowledge together, and maybe invite entrepreneurs and startups to see what are they doing from a different kind of approach. So yeah, that really is a good addition to this question. Thank you. Turning back to Sanna Marie, because I think within this ecosystem of tourism and the influence of digital transformation and disruption caused by the development of technology outside the sector, and of course next to a more sustainable and environmental friendly ambition for the future, what do you think is needed to bring a digital and sustainable transition in a consumer or guest oriented market as the tourism sector is? Because when we focus on the next tourism generation, how do we accelerate the awareness on these topics and improve the roles and knowledge of researchers, professors, lecturers, and students? And yeah, maybe you can share some more about what role education plays in this.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, about digital skills, we have conducted this so-called COVID-19 survey to tourist entrepreneurs here in our region 4 times now. We have repeated it 4 times during the pandemic, and the results, they show very clearly that digital skills have increased. This is also because changes in target segments, and that meant also changing the marketing activities. Tourist companies, they had to discover new ways to reach individual tourists and enhance their digital marketing skills. So I think that this COVID-19 was very much an eye-opening for the tourist enterprises, and also because the target segments changed, they had to develop their digital skills. They, for example, have started to sell their products and service more and more online with different networks, platforms, established social media accounts, and so forth. When it comes to sustainability, sustainable tourist development and responsibility, they are the themes promoted very strongly by Visit Finland, our national tourist board. And I think that when you talk about tourism in Finland these days, you automatically speak about sustainable tourist development. And I think Visit Finland has a huge role because they have launched the Sustainable Travel Finland label and for the tourist enterprises. And currently we support these tourist enterprises with trainings to improve their performance and apply for the label. So yeah, the National Tourist Board has a very significant role by introducing the current themes, which then are promoted and implemented at the regional level. And what I've noticed that tourist educators, they also have followed this progress strongly and participated in different communication activities. And I, for example, benchmarked the tourist curricula in higher education. And what I noticed that these themes, sustainability and digital tourism, they have been quite acknowledged and also integrated to the curricula for the students to learn. What it comes to the eyes of the consumers, I think in Finland we emphasize a lot nowadays the significance of sustainability communication and raising customers' awareness. It's true that many companies act responsibly, but now we emphasize that they should also inform their guests about that, because they really have to show what they do in terms of developing sustainability. And this is also because I think tourism is a means to bring sustainability issues closer to a regular customer. As a tourist industry, we are much more closer and familiar to a regular customer than many other industries are. So I think we have a very strong role as an industry there.
Yes, I fully agree, and some nice ideas on how you can change also the roles in the organization, and also to change the roles throughout the industry. Saskia, we talked about the perspective of education and skills in tourism, and as well how the scenarios might be and what we need to change. But you are involved into a lot of initiatives, right? Focusing on sustainability. And who needs to do what if we want to meet these challenges and seize the moments of opportunities to a more sustainable oriented tourism sector in terms of collaboration across Europe?
Well, very easy. We all need to do something. We can't point at each other. I think the government has to do things, educational institutes, the customer, the company, everyone has to work together and think in possibilities, not in restrictions. And I think we saw in the last couple of months that there's so much is possible actually, but and especially if you work together. When we've had a lot of discussions with our partners on sustainability, because for example, we're currently working on a project on measuring the positive impact of travel, because I think it's so important, because we've seen so many attention for the negative effects of traveling, but we tend to forget how much positive things travel can bring. So, and that's also a discussion we have with our partners. So what is a positive impact of travel and how can we improve it?
I think that's a really good approach to also spread the message of the human factor of tourism, and where connections are made and emotions are shared. That's one of the USPs, of course, of being a tourism organization. You can really bring that to your consumers, and in the eyes of that. Andrew, what is one thing for you really want to see in future skills in general, maybe in methods or in tools, as added value that can be an added value in the eyes of consumers when we talk about recovery, especially in this sector? But what is one thing you really think of, this could be changing and this could be really boost the recovery in the eyes of consumers?
Wow, big question.
Big question.
I suppose customer service in a way. So understanding the customer and responding to the customer's needs, but also a little bit, Saskia's talking about almost steering the customer in a certain direction as well. So sustainable tourism has been talked about a lot, and making people think of tourism in those terms, but still making it about the positives that come out of tourism, as you've just highlighted. So really getting to know the customer and understanding the customer and meeting the customer's needs. I think work in that field is really important.
So still customer centricity, maybe with the high-tech influences of digitization technology, and still with the human touch, so very focused on the human aspect.
Absolutely. There's so much talk, of course, about digital, but actually one of the things that we find when students are thinking about where they're going to study is the personal experience they have with the people helping them with their application. And then once they join an institution, helping them get the most out of their studies. That personal touch is so important to go alongside the digital that helps them get the most out of the experience. And the same is true for the tourist looking to get an experience. And I think what's really interesting, one of the things, of course, that's come out very strongly through the pandemic is a changing type of customer. A lot of the customers that have been in the tourism industry have been domestic rather than international because people haven't been able to travel. I live in Cornwall in the UK, and it's been a great year for tourism here in Cornwall, but with domestic tourists rather than international tourists. So a very different perspective and a very different need to understand a different type of customer.
Right. And then I like to end with Sanna Marie from the education perspective to bring it fully back to linking education with the industry and government. What do you think, Sanna Marie, about the benefit that innovative education can bring for tourist guests and actually the sector as a whole when we talk about skills development?
I mean, innovative education, what it can bring to tourist industry as a whole. Well, I think that, for example, of course, tourist education is very, very important in terms of for the industry to take new trends, and of course for the small here we have micro and small enterprises, and it's very important to support them with different kind of training so that they really can take into for their advantage and follow the trends that are currently and what kind of skills are needed. I think it's very important to inform them and increase their skills by different trainings, for example, like in the EU funded projects we are running here. So we think they are very important target groups of those projects and different kind of trainings and very practical hands-on trainings. I think it's very important for us to understand the way enterprises and entrepreneurs are trained, that it's not academic education, but we really have to apply different methods to engage them and make them also committed to our trainings.
Right, thank you for that. Yeah, as we talk about education in this session, we talk about higher education, but of course there's also the vocational training. And I like what you said about the importance of being involved in European projects, since this is really bringing together the countries, but also the approaches, the governments and the ideas to innovate education, to innovate curricula, and to innovate industry together with a collaborative framework, actually, to see how we can think about new strategies and new visions on a European level and then translate it to national, regional, and local levels. Well, regarding the time, I need to thank you already for your interesting inputs, your thoughts, and in this fascinating last session discussion. Thanks to our speakers, we have a broader perspective on skills development, some skills gaps, and future skills and training needs. And it ended, of course, with a vision on how to deliver and implement more digital, social, and green skills in the future, that all the experts underlined again and again. Today, we're not done with this session. We only just started. And as we continue, we will start at noon, at 12 Central European time, with a module focused on addressing skills needs with innovative collaboration. They will talk about innovative ideas. How can we bring together government, education, and tourism stakeholders on a more regular basis? And then at 2 o'clock in this afternoon, Central European time, we will focus on integrating new skills into industry and education curricula, which gives some ideas from different kind of universities, and how to improve your curricula. And in module 4 at the end at 4 o'clock, it's a really interesting one. We will focusing on envisioning a skills partnership in a tourism sector, where we also have Dr. Barbara Neuhover. She's professor and head of experience design, and Elva Keres, she is the policy officer for tourism in the Directorate General for Internal Markets, Industry and Entrepreneurship and SMEs at the European Commission. So I will say stay tuned. Thank you for all of us for joining us on this session and to see what is important as we go forward. And I end this with wishing you a very pleasant and inspiring rest of the day, and stay safe. Thank you so much.